Hey everyone, and welcome back to another installation video brought to you by Rockford Fosgate. As always, I'm Rico Felice with the Rockford Technical Training Institute, and in this video, we're going to take a look at the installation of some of our new Harley-Davidson motorcycle-specific products. So let's go inside to our R&D department and see how these products are installed on the motorcycles. All right, everyone, I'm now joined by Brad with our new product development team, and he's going to walk us through the installation of our front audio kit on this 2013 Road Glide motorcycle. So Brad, specifically, what are we going to be installing today?
Well, in our kit, we're including a pair of our TMS6RG speakers, a TM400X4AD amplifier, and our new RFK HD amplifier installation kit.
All right, well, let's get started and just see how easy it is.
To begin the disassembly of the front fairing, we're going to start by removing the 6 screws located on the outer edge. 2 are located up by the windscreen, 2 are located by the speaker, and there's 2 more down below the pocket lids.
All right, now since we are going to be removing the fairing, we want to make sure that we protect the front fender, so we're going to place a small cover over the fender so it doesn't get damaged. Alright guys, so now that we have the 6 screws out of the back side of the fairing, the next thing we need to remove are the lower marker lights. Now these lights are held on with 2 1/2-inch nuts located on the inside of the fairing. So we're going to use our 1/2-inch wrench, take the nuts off, and then pull the lights out. Alright, so now that we have the nuts removed from the inside of the fairing, we can go ahead and pull the marker light assembly out. You want to be careful because this marker light assembly is going to still be connected by the wire. Now because we're not disconnecting the marker light completely, we're going to take a rag, wrap it around the light, and then secure it in place with some tape so it doesn't damage the paint or the chrome. With that done, we're going to move over to the other side, repeat the process, at which point we're ready to remove the fairing. Alright, so now that we have the marker lights removed, we're ready to go ahead and lift off the fairing to gain access underneath.
Now when we're lifting off the fairing, we do want to lift straight up because the fairing is actually also mounted on a set of hooks on the front. With our fairing now removed from the bike, we can go in and disconnect the headlights and move it out of the way. With our fairing out of the way, we can now move on to removing the speakers. As you can see on this bike, somebody has already replaced them with some aftermarket, so it's slightly different than most likely yours. In this case, the removal process is still relatively the same. We're going to disconnect the wires and remove the screws so we can remove the speaker and the factory bracket as well. With our speakers and speaker brackets now removed from the fairing, we're ready to install our new TMS6RG speakers. We're going to use the supplied hardware that we included to mount them.
Alright guys, so now that we have the speakers installed into the fairing, we're ready to start the prep work on the amplifier installation kit. So Brad, obviously we've got a number of parts we need to assemble before we get the amp in the bike. What do we need to do first?
Okay, we're going to open up our kit, and inside we have our universal amplifier mounting plate and our 2 brackets that we're going to use on the 9813 Road Glide. We're going to need to assemble those on the back before we put it in the bike.
Okay, well let's go ahead and get that done and then we can get on to the amplifier. So with the mounting plate flipped over, you're going to locate the 2 positions for the mounting brackets themselves, and then attach them to the back of the plate using the 2mm screws. Now once we have the 2 mounting brackets attached to the back of the plate, we're ready to flip it over and move on to attaching the amplifier. So to mount the amplifier, simply align it with the mounting holes and attach it with the supplied hardware. Now that we've got the amp mounted on the plate, we're ready to move over to the bike and get it mounted up.
Now that we have our amplifier mounted to our bracket assembly, we're ready to put it in the bike. Now you're going to see that the amplifier is mounted upside down. We did this to ensure the best possible wire routing on the bike. Now when we go to mount this, we're going to use our 2 stock studs that hold the front fairing onto the bike. Now as you can see, the upper bolt is slightly hard to get to. With the wires in the way, the easiest thing that I've found is to use a 1/2-inch ratchet wrench to get to it.
So as Brad is finishing up the amplifier installation in the front, we're then going to move back to the middle of the bike and continue the disassembly process. So the first thing we want to do is remove the seat and get it out of our way. To do that, we're going to use our number 3 Phillips screwdriver and remove the screw located at the back of the seat. Once the screw's out, simply lift the seat up, slide it back.
With the seat now out of the way, we can now move on to the fuel tank. To do so, we need to remove 2 1/2-inch bolts here and a bolt on either side of the front side of the tank. Now once those are removed, we can do the 2 vent lines here and here, and then the electrical connection here. With the bolts removed and electrical connections undone, we can now move on to our fuel line. Ours is on a quick release, so it's very easy to do. If you have an older bike with the other style and you're unsure on how to take it apart, see your owner's manual for advice.
Alright, so now that we have all the bolts out and the tank disconnected, we can go ahead, lift the tank off, set it aside, continue the installation. With the tank out of the way, we can move ahead and remove the wire chase cover off the backbone of the bike.
With our fuel tank now removed, we can now gain access to our battery. To do that, we got to remove the ECU and the battery cover. There's a couple harnesses we might have to move, and then there's the 2 bolts in the back we're going to use our 1/2-inch socket to remove.
All right, so now that Brad has the ECU and the battery cover out of the way, exposing the battery terminals, we can begin running our main power harness from the battery back up to the fairing. Now you also notice this bike has the rear Tour-Pak speaker option installed. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and run the rear speaker harness that's also included in the RFK HD audio kit. Now if you're only doing the 2-speaker install at the front with the primary kit, you won't need to run this at this time. So we're going to lay our wire harness along the backbone wire channel first, just to get placement of the wires. At the battery, we're going to go ahead and remove the battery terminals and connect the battery cables utilizing a 10mm nut driver. Once the battery connection is made, we'll take our fuse holder and simply tuck it down into the space in front of the battery. At this point, we can lay in the wire harness and then pass it up to the front of the fairing. Now, until the final battery connection is made at the amplifier, we're going to go ahead and leave this channel open so we can make sure that we have all the slack pulled up, and then we can neaten up and everything and replace the cover.
With our rear speaker harness in place, now we're going to need to remove the rear speaker so we can run the wires into the pods. We're going to use our T10 driver to start this process. With our speaker out of the way, we can now begin to put the wires in the pod. Now you want to take note to the labels so you know which side they go on. We're going to put those in through the hole that's already there from the factory that has the factory wires going through it. With the wires in place, we can now make our connections to the factory speaker wire to the input harness. With those connected, we can now move on to putting the speaker in.
So now that the input connections have been made, we'd go ahead and install the new speaker. Now, like the factory speaker, the grill and speaker mount as one assembly. First thing we want to do is make the electrical connections with the input speaker wire that we just ran. We position the speaker in the opening, align the new grill, and install the grill and speaker assembly using the supplied hardware that came with the speaker. Now that we have this speaker installed, we'll move over to the other side, replace it, and then we're ready to start routing our wiring back to the front.
With both of our rear Tour-Pak speakers mounted, we can now begin to tie up our wiring moving forward so all the slack is left under the fairing. Now once we do that, we can go ahead and replace our wire cover, our battery cover, and ECU.
All right, so now we're back at the front of the bike. We've got our power wire and rear speaker wiring harness ran. So we're ready to go ahead and hook up the input and output harness for the front side of the bike. Now in the kit, you get a front input and output wiring harness, which also comes with these adapter plugs. These plugs have a pigtail attached to them that are used for the 98 to 2013 model bikes. Simply plug them in to each of the respective harnesses, and you're ready to go ahead and make the connections.
Now when you're making these connections, take note to the labels on the wires designating what side they get hooked up to.
So now that we have our wiring pulled up to the front, all the connections are made, and wires plugs routed to the amp location, we can go ahead and make the final connections at the amplifier. So now that we have the connections made to the amplifier, we're ready to make some adjustments on the control panel before we test the system. Now, looking at what would be the bottom row of dials and switches, you'll see a 2-channel and 4-channel switch. Now normally if you're simply doing the front speaker only kit, you're going to leave it in the 2-channel mode. Since this bike was set up with the rear Tour-Pak speaker option, we're going to go ahead and switch it to 4-speaker position. Next to the switch, you're also going to notice the crossover controls. Now, since these are high frequency speakers and they don't really play low bass frequencies, we're going to want to make sure that the 2 switches on the amplifier are set to the high pass position. Then the adjustment dials, which control the frequency, we'll want to make sure that they are set at 80 Hertz. The PEQ adjustments in the middle, we're going to leave turned all the way down. Now we're ready to move on and adjust the input level controls. To do this, you can follow the quick start guide that's included with the amplifier using the setup CD and the radio on the bike.
With the amplifier fully set up now, we're ready to go ahead and test the system. Now we're going to test the audio as well as all the bike systems just to make sure everything has been put back together properly. Now after that, we can go ahead and reassemble the bike and get it back on the road.
Alright guys, that pretty much wraps up the install for today. As you can see, it was pretty straightforward and easy to do, and hopefully you got a lot of good information out of it. So, Brad, is there anything you want to add before we take off?
Well, as always, feel free to give our tech support team a call before, during, or after your installation if you have any questions.
And as always, don't forget to check out our website for more details and information on the products you saw today, as well as everything else we offer, and check out our YouTube channel for more installation videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next one.